Here we are with the last episode of 2023 for Rethink Real Estate. First of all, just want to put a big thank you out there. Chris and I are doing an episode here today where we're just going to go through the numbers a little bit. And we go through and we thank everybody many times. But just again, a big thank you to everybody that supported us. It's actually made us feel really great about what we're doing. But today's episode with Chris is sort of a wrap up on the numbers, like how we've grown the business. We're being, incredibly open in the sense of that, how many impressions are we getting? We started off with nothing, how we've grown it and how Chris's vision of that has grown and the exposure has grown. So again, it's about the persistence. It's about how it works. It's about, our YouTube, our podcast, our social audiences and how they've grown and why they've grown in different ways. So we're going to go through the analytics today and give you guys some of the numbers so that you can understand, how we've been able to grow this through whether it's the right content or the right exposure or the right strategy through what Chris is doing behind the scenes. So hopefully it helps out. Again, a very big thank you to everybody that's joined us this year. Pumped out 108 episodes, as we mentioned, and it's been a great journey so far. Looking forward to getting back on things. January 8th is when we're starting again. So we've got a really exciting month planned for you in January around planning. We go into a little bit of it in the episode. But again, guys, have a safe and happy Christmas and looking forward to chatting to everybody or having me back in your ears, so to speak, a little bit creepy, in 2024. Thanks so much. Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Jingle bells, Christopher smells, Robin laid an egg. Look at this.
Ben Brady laid an egg.
Look at this hat, folks. If you're watching, this thing is a travesty.
It's classic, bro. It's iconic. You wish you had this branding.
That's fair. That's fair.
This is quality branding right here. Everyone knows exactly what this is for.
But for those that aren't on YouTube watching, Chris has strategically placed the bobble on his Santa hat at the front too. That's pure branding right there as well.
When I can go backwards, it just looks weird. It looks like it looks like that, like Star Wars characters. Weird. I don't know.
Well, folks, we're wrapping up Rethink Real Estate for the year. Chris, what number episode is this? 108, did you say?
108 episodes on the entire year, which is awesome, especially because I think we started a couple weeks into January, a few weeks into January, so we didn't even have the full January, which is cool.
Well, I think that there's a couple of cool things that we're going to take you through from a statistics perspective today because we wanted to sort of round out the year with an episode of Chris sort of just taking you guys through a few things. Chris and I go through a lot of stuff from a marketing, from an online perspective, and we've been very open about our journey, what we're trying to do with exposing Harcourts and Harcourts Auctions a little bit further based on the perspective of what we're doing. And, in the long format, the short format, all that stuff. Today's a little bit about going through the numbers of what we've achieved. And when I say we, I think the one thing that I want to make sure that we acknowledge here is that, Chris, you've single-handedly done this, from an exposure perspective and taken these numbers to where they are. And I'm personally very grateful for what you've done and what you bring to the group. But it's funny when you literally sit down with somebody and you and I had a relationship, a very trusted relationship well before you came back and started working with us, is that you mention what you can do and you sort of turn around and you sort of think to yourself, you're like, you know what, I really hope he can. It's in no way, shape or form because you've never seen it happen before, that you're overly confident with it. You're sort of like, you're skeptical when it comes to this stuff and perfectly good strangers that are reaching out and all of that thing. But I think that this is real proof of what the premise that you've brought to us and the greater exposure that you've given and all of that stuff, that we want to obviously go through that today and do like a bit of proof in the pudding sort of an episode. So why don't you start off with sharing some of the numbers?
Yeah, so as we said, we've launched 108 episodes specifically, and this is just about the podcast. So let's dive deep into the podcast because I think this gives everybody a little bit of proof that your content, regardless of how you deliver it, can make significant waves in your business and can expose you to both your community as well as your eventual client base. So we'll focus on the podcast specifically, but we've done 108 episodes this year. We introduced our podcast before we did 100 episodes on the podcast, and it was strictly only audio. And now we've transitioned completely to do video and audio. mostly to capitalize on video views and video impressions on other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So those would be the main ones we focus on. We still get great podcast listeners who are strictly audio only. We have introduced the video aspect onto Spotify. So if you are watching on Spotify, you can actually, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can actually watch us as well on Spotify, which is great. But stuff like Apple Podcasts and everything like that, all the listens on there, those don't equate to video views. And those weren't really our focus for this year. Our focus was to introduce new platforms and introduce Harcourts Auctions to a new wave of audience that might not necessarily be listening or searching for real estate podcasts on their mobile devices when they're out. So we've specifically on YouTube, we've amassed over 125,000 video views this year alone, which is tremendous. It's such a massive jump. We weren't big on YouTube prior to this, and Ben could probably speak to this. We posted a couple property videos here and there. We posted a couple explainer videos, tutorial videos about our process and everything like that. But it's funny when you look on YouTube, it says greater than 999% increase year on year. And so we're just maxing out the increase levels because we never had a basis to do it in the first place. So we've done 125,000.
I was pumped to get like over like 300 subscribers when we first start this. Like, yep. I think 300 came in the first 3 months. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like now we're over 700 subscribers, which I think is like if you look at that, like they're people that are literally subscribing and getting the notifications and people that are loyal to the content and everything along those lines. And I often, because I'm a big podcast guy, okay? I'm not a big YouTube guy, right? From a personal perspective, I'm a big podcast guy in the sense of that I'm in the car, I'm on a run, I'm like, that's my absorption of information. There's no question. I find that better than books, easier than books and all that stuff. So that's where my focus was in the beginning. You shed the light on the visual element side of things. And I have to admit, I think that I'm probably prouder of the YouTube stuff. Like I think it looks sleek. It looks like the studio that we've got set up, the stuff that you do from the visuals on all of that and the way that we edit it and cut in the intros and things along those lines. I think that's more of the digital business card of your business and the look of your business. I think that part of it, regardless of whether people watch you long format or they don't. Like Chris, I know you're a big YouTube guy though. Like you watch YouTube constantly.
Constantly. It's probably my number one platform. I have it on my TV. It's where I get my news. I don't have cable in that sense, so I watch a lot of YouTube, and I just like YouTube. I don't watch it in a sense of like funny videos or prank videos or anything like that. I do watch it for podcasts, for stuff like this, and even we talk about podcasts specifically, but like Joe Rogan Experience, it started on YouTube, and that was where I used to indulge in that. In that podcast before I went over to Spotify, and now I still watch it on Spotify on their video platform, which is great. And so I've always wanted it up just in case they're showing visuals or just in case, there's a funny moment and then I'll stop working for a second. I'll glance over and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, and then I'll glance back. Like, so I like to always have it open. When you look at your watch time on your computer or your iPad or even your phone, it's funny because it's like YouTube's always like 20 hours a day. And I'm like, it's just on. It's just playing. Like, it's just not, like I'm not watching it. It's like when you walk into someone's office.
But you rationalize, mate. You rationalize it any way you need to. Okay, right. You rationalize it any way you need to. You go for it. But I think that like the other part that I've been amazed at as well is the interaction from perfectly good strangers on the content. Yeah. The part, like, don't get me wrong, because of the nature of my opinionated fashion of things. Definitely, there's some negative stuff that comes up every now and then, and there are people that are there. I think we've done a really good job not to respond to that because I can be the one that's like, all right, let me get into an argument. But Chris is in control of all the responses, so which is good. They have to be vetted through
some
him
of
first.
them. Yeah, some of them. Ben jumps in on some of them. So if you are trying to talk to Ben, I get it over to Ben if that's the case.
But no, I definitely see it. It's just the ones that are the bad ones are the ones that catch your attention. It's amazing how like some of the negative stuff that you get or some people that just really don't understand it you can really focus on that when you're not focusing on all the people that are actually listening and giving you good feedback and all of that as well. So I think you've just got to put yourself out there a little more.
Well, and from a real estate, we're in a hot topic of an industry. So it's not like, people can have passive thoughts about our industry. It's really people don't like their landlords or they think all real estate people are dirty salespeople. So we get those comments and it happens. But I think everybody who's in the real estate community who actually subscribes to the channel, like they're super happy with the content that we're delivering. And I think that shows in the sense that all the leads that have come in on the back of
Mm.
this podcast as well. I think, Ben, you've probably had anywhere from 5 to 10 great conversations this year,
Oh,
if
mate,
not more.
I'm speaking to a gentleman in Nashville at the moment, Texas. We've got one in Virginia. We've got another one in, Georgia, being Atlanta. We've had people from Canada. We've had even interactions in Mexico. Like, again, it's interesting to see the widespread, how widespread it can go. Now, I know that if you're a realtor and you're thinking, well, hey, I don't need to get exposure to that extent, you've got to take that mentality away. Some of the best realtors in the country are based off like 20 to 30% of their business is referral based from other people all over the country.
A
If
hundred
you're an
percent.
inbound destination, you've got to be aware of that.
Yeah, when I was working for the San Diego team, when I first started real estate, our number one goal was to improve our referral business. That was like literally one of my job criterias was help improve our referral business. And so we held, this was before YouTube was massive and everything like that. But we were like, okay, let's hold meetups in Vegas and like at the real estate conventions and pass out business cards and all that stuff. And this is the digital way of doing that. But also, you don't have to worry about the big giant numbers of everyone else if you're super hyper local, like we've talked about with people in the past. If you're super local in your content, whether it's Bend, Oregon, or San Diego, or Southern California, or Seattle, you'll get the viewers who are only interested in that area. And while your numbers might not be 125,000 video views in a year, your numbers will be good enough to sustain your business and actually bring in leads for you. So if you get 10 video views, but one of those is a local lead, it's like, oh, I was just thinking about moving to Seattle and I did some research on Seattle and I came across your video. Like that's a home run right there. So I would do that every single day.
Anything that you would like? So if we broke down our categories, we've got the podcast, we've got our YouTube channel, we've got our social element. Let's talk
Yep.
about the growth that we've had in the social side of things, because we were really big into the middle of the year as we were promoting things on the short clips and everything along those lines. I think everybody also needs to understand, I think that they may have a larger perception. Some people might really understand this as well, is that that are close to us, they understand that we're not a big team. Like in any way, shape, or form. I think that people need to understand as well, is that Chris, you edit everything, you do the shorts, you single-handedly do absolutely everything from a digital perspective for us. Which leads me to this other thing, like this perception that people think that they need like this gigantic team to get it off the ground. Now, don't get me wrong, you are stretched thin from your capacity. There's no question, but we're doing this to a large, like we're putting to out 2 long format podcast episodes every week. We're trying to do volume based stuff. We're over many different states and marketplaces. Like we're talking about, like, if you've got a local real estate, if you're in an area, like even taking down Seattle, like the Seattle metro area, is that you don't need a big team to do this stuff. Don't have a perception that this is so scary and that you need somebody to champion this for you, and you don't want to think about it. Like it has to be something that you've got to absolutely dive into and be a part of your business. But sorry, getting back to the social element, you did a lot of the short reels and everything along those lines from the long format stuff that we've done. I think a lot of people love the short stuff, but
Of
they don't
course.
understand that the gold comes from the long format element of your business.
Yeah, it's one thing to deliberately set out like scripts and topics for your short form content, and if you're really good at that, and you're saying, "Hey, make a 1 minute video on this." Like Kathy and Brent are really good at that, right? Like
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
"Make a 1 minute video on this topic. Make a 1 minute video on this topic." That's great. We know from our conversations that a lot of our gold comes out of longer form talking, and Ben, like if you get Ben on a phone call, getting off in 1 minute is pretty tough. And so, like, especially when you're talking about auction or you're talking about anything like that, same thing with me. I ramble on, I go, we just kind of space out and we go different directions when it comes to all of our thought processes, which is why this long form content makes perfect sense for us,
Yeah.
because then we can go through and we can say, hey, in this 40 minutes that we're talking, there might be 40 clips in there. There might be 30, 20, like however we dice it up. It could be 10-second clips. It could be 1 minute clips. It could be 90-second clips. And so that's the big thing when it came to the long form content. That was really our focus, was if we can pump out 1 or 2 of these, because I listened to the previous podcast episodes that we were running and everything like that in the first 100 episodes. And I was like, there's a lot of gold in there. We're just not elevating it. we're not pushing that out to the masses like we should be. And I think that's where we wanted to transition this. But nobody just wants to listen to an audio in, Instagram Reels or anything like that, which is where this video came into play from that standpoint. If a realtor just sat down here with a loan officer or a first-time home buyer or a military member getting a VA loan or anything like that, like that's gold that you can then chop up into a lot of small segments and then
Yeah.
use it for the entire year. So you can do 5 episodes that would then cater towards your entire business and just repurpose that content over and over and over. On Facebook alone, we saw, and we were very active. I would say, Ben, we were very active for Harcourts Auctions prior to me coming back on board, which was on our Facebook and our Instagram. We posted a lot on Facebook and Instagram. We didn't post as much on YouTube.
Yeah, but Chris, let's refine that though.
Yes.
We posted, we didn't. I don't think it was filler content, but it wasn't the right content to build. But just before we go forward, sorry, I don't want to interrupt too much, but I want to talk about this long format thing. I just want to make a point on this because this is where it helped me. Right now, if you said to me, Ben, speak about why auction is great, or why is this good, or give me a particular topic, and I would take a minute to sort of get into the groove and then get into a part, and then I'd find my way through it, and then I get back into what I know and what are the major points, and it took me a long time. Whereas if you said to me, Ben, write me a script in 30 seconds of why auction's great, I was like, fuck you, dude. Like that is the most difficult thing to do in the world. Like for me anyway.
It's hard to have an elevator pitch on every single topic in our industry. And that's what I would equate it down to. So that's why this long form made more sense to us. Now, other people could have an elevator pitch on a million different topics. And so like good for them. Like that's how they think. And that's just not how we were setting our business up. We wanted to go this route. For Facebook alone, and Instagram, we were putting a lot of filler content out there. We were putting a lot of property photos and a lot of
this is before you were on.
Before 2023. So we wanted to make it a strategic plan to share a lot more of insights and more of Ben's face and more of the auction directors and more of myself, and just kind of let people get introduced to the team directly on our Instagram and our Facebook platforms. And that resulted, for Facebook alone, we reached 91,000 different accounts. And Facebook's really good at showing accounts who actually care about your content. As if you scroll through, your algorithm is catered towards you. Facebook wants you to stay on there. So those 91,000 people are in some way, shape, or form interested in real estate, or interested in us, or interested in Ben, in the local area, stuff like that. So we reached 91,000 accounts on Facebook alone. That might not seem like a crazy amount, but again, we are a super lean team. And that's 188% increase that we had year over year last year. So 2023,
and it wasn't for the sake of posting more content.
No,
because we were doing heaps. It's more about the right stuff. Like, how's that? Like 180, what is it? 188%?
188% increase year on year. So 2022 to 2023. And that's accounts. So that's not just like impressions or anything like that. That's the more people that we've actually reached on Facebook's platform. Instagram is a much bigger increase, which is crazy to me because we were pretty active on Instagram. We share every time we get tagged, we share our stories, everything like that. So 2022 to 2023, it was an 1,100% increase. We reached 126,000 accounts on Instagram alone last year. And to be candid with you guys, we took a little bit of a hiatus from social media the last quarter, just based on volume, just based on what we were handling.
And managing the team. And, we stepped it up. We brought on a couple of new regions, all the stuff that you had to do from a data perspective, because people might think that your job is only the data or the marketing side of it. The marketing side of it. Chris manages all of our data for each individual area that we're in as well, which is actually like we're pulling from MLS feeds, and that is some of the most convoluted, worst data that you can ever gather in the world. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And so we had a large potential to be, 2,000% increase, or even like 300% increase on Facebook. So the increases are so significant when it comes to this stuff. And it was just based on taking those 108 episodes that we had, chopping them up into little pieces and getting people interested. That actually drove a lot more listeners and podcast subscribers and YouTube subscribers as well. So it kind of worked hand in hand, where we could take the long form content to then elevate the brand and get more brand awareness out there via the short form content. But also that short form content, we linked to every single episode inside of those comments and everything like that. So people were able to go back and they were able to see the podcast that they actually had an interest in. One of our number one podcast episodes of this year was actually AI.
Yeah.
which was very interesting. Like it was me and you talking about the rise in AI when it comes to real estate, and one of those things is because a lot of the short form content that we posted out there actually got really good hits and really
Mm.
good video views, and people went back because they wanted to learn more. So one of those, we saw the traffic too. You could see traffic sources and everything like that in the podcast analytics, and you could see that it all came back from Facebook, YouTube, Shorts, and Instagram, which was really cool.
Question for you, mate. What would as we wrap up this episode, and I think I'm pretty fulfilled with what we've got going on. We've got next year coming up as well. We're back on January 8th. We're going to take a quick little break. But what would you do differently, mate, if you were going to reflect on the year? Is there a couple of different strategies, a couple of things differently that we might bring into 2024, or what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think the big thing of doing differently is being a little bit more strategic when it comes to the ads that we were doing. So we
Right.
just, from a time perspective, we post a lot of the same short form content into ads, but almost having a better funnel and just getting a little bit better with those. So we took all this long form content, and a lot of the times that Ben was talking about auction, or we had a guest on who was then speaking about auction as well, like when Chad was on or Jesse were on or people like that. We took a lot of those pieces of content. We actually use those as ads for our business, and the same thing that you guys could do again for have someone on for a VA loan or something like that and walk through the process and say, have you had these same questions? Feel free to reach out. It could be a simple thing like that. We did similar things when it comes to our ads, and we got really good traction. But the problem with those, we had a lot of leads come in when every single time we would initially launch those ads, and then they would tail off because so many people saw it already and they just weren't interested. So we would get 10, 20, 30 leads that would come in right off the bat from realtors, and then it would tail off. I think if once we open up these avenues and these new territories that we're trying to branch into, we'll have more data of realtors. We can get that more strategically into people's faces at the right moment. And
Yeah.
I think that's probably our focus for 2024 in the first quarter.
Yeah, and a little bit of clarification. I know that you explained it a little bit, but the clarification, like our target market is agents that have had listings on the marketplace for a period of time where they might need some help using our non-distressed auction process. And this is external to the marketplaces that our Harcourts businesses are in, but it's also targeting our own agents and making sure that auction stays top of mind. It's also targeting the other agents in that region as well. And this is through the data that Chris collects. Like, people might think that this blanket approach is there, but it's not. Like it's taking the data and the audiences from people that have hit 30 days plus with a listing, and then targeting those people and then putting them into and using the stuff and the content in the ad format. I think that that's something that we're really trying at the moment to instill some of the methodology of what we're doing, trying to do that into people's residential real estate businesses, into their databases, into being in front of their people, using the digital door knocking element or digital reminder element of somebody still there in a passive sense. I know we've said this many times. I think flyer dropping is gone. There's no data you can collect of who's got it, whether it was delivered, all of that stuff. I think that this is the new passive element of making sure that it's that soft touch point, so that you're constantly in front of the right people or the people that so that therefore when the time comes that real estate is thought of, that you are constantly top of mind in that sense. So, it's kind of what we're trying to do on a much, much larger scale for the real estate industry perspective.
And you'll see it too, like from the digital perspective. I mean, tonight's football game, which is Thursday Night Football. I know we record this the day before, but Thursday Night Football this year is on Amazon. Like everything's kind of transitioning to these digital things. So the commercials will run through a digital provider like Amazon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not these cable networks. It's not these print shops or anything like that. It's not newspapers. Like, people are consuming media a lot differently these days, and I think every real estate agent should be focused on that. Again, I consume media a lot differently than Ben, but we're both doing it from a digital perspective for probably the majority of our days. I'm on YouTube, Ben's on podcasts, and Danielle, my spouse, she's on Facebook,
Yeah.
and TikTok,
And
and stuff like
I've
that.
got to be honest. I also rely a little bit on emails. I
Yeah,
rely on those people sending emails out and going, oh, what's that topic or whatever it is as well. So, and that's been a big. I've got to be honest as well. Is that, Chris? I thought when you had your email strategy of emailing agents, I'm like, email's dead. Like, really? I don't think so. And that's our number one driver. It really is our
yes.
number one driver at the moment. But I think it. But
It's our
I think
capture point. I
yeah,
would
it's
say
our
it's the hook that catches the fish. There's a lot of other chumming the waters and stuff like that we're doing ahead of time.
That's a perfect analogy, actually. If you think about it, the chumming of the water. That's good. Well, folks, on that note, thanks so much for joining us on Rethink Real Estate this year. It's been a blast. I've really enjoyed the guests. I've really enjoyed my conversations with Chris on the detail side of the digital and the marketing side of the business as well. Hopefully it's an all-rounded topic, or we've given you some all-rounded topics. We've given you some all-rounded guests so that therefore, you get the most value out of this. I think thinking laterally is one of the things I say quite often, is that we've got to get outside of the box. We've got to look at other industries outside of ours in order to see what we can bring into that real estate space. But if you want any topics, or you've got any guests, you've got anybody in the field, you've got whatever it is, we would love to hear from you. I know that a lot of you reach out already, but we would love to hear recommendations or something along those lines of anything to do in the real estate space, or even external to the real estate space, or a parallel. But again, thank you for your loyalty. Thanks so much for joining us on Rethink Real Estate. Really looking forward to 2024. We're back on January 8th, and that month, Chris, we're going to be going through and talking about planning. We're going to focus it all on planning. And I just want everybody to know that my focus on planning, I hate planning. I really don't like it. It's one of the things that I struggle with. And our big focus for the month of January, one of the big questions I asked a lot of our guests and that we constantly talk about is that, what do you do wrong when you plan? It's not a matter of how do you do it. There's so many different ways out there that you can do it, and each one of them is going to fit you. But it's, what do you do wrong? What's the things that you shouldn't do, and what goes wrong?
And I would say too, all these numbers that we expressed today, all the video views and everything like that, that's all thanks to you guys. So thank you guys so much for, sharing this podcast, commenting on things, hitting the like button, putting it in your email signatures, sending emails to people. Like, we've seen it all, and we really appreciate all of that. And I think, we wouldn't have this growth, and we wouldn't be able to try to provide this value to the entire real estate community without the help of you guys. So thank you so much.
Well said. Hey, what are you doing for a couple of weeks off that you've got?
I don't know. I have a lot of Santa material.
That's good. Yeah, that's got the kids, Santa, all that stuff.
Oh, I'm smoking my first prime rib. That is what I'm doing. So I bought a giant prime rib. I went to the butcher and got a really nice cut, and grade A prime rib, and that's going on the smoker for probably 8 hours. So look forward to that. I hope you all are jealous.
Is it snowing in Seattle yet?
No, not yet. Probably in the next couple of weeks, I would say. It's cold enough. It's just not wet enough.
Fair enough. Well, that's funny because I've literally just come off the back of rain season for the last 2 days in California. I've got family here from Australia, and it categorically rains every single time they're here. Never rains when they're not here. Anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, Christmas in Australia is a different beast. So they just spend it on the beach. So Cairns Christmas, look it up.
Happy holidays, everybody. Enjoy.
Happy holidays. Bye.
So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.